Said, oh no, I know better than that. I'm going to go out there and do something. So he was the leader of the pack in going out and persecuting the church and going from house to house. If there are any Christians here, we better do something. Come on, tell me. Any Christians you know about? And he'd go and arrest them if he found any, put them in jail, and some of them were killed. And that was what he was doing. You think God hated him? You think God looked down and said, that guy, I need to strike him down with a thunderbolt? I tell you, we've got a God of grace. He knew the end of the story. He knew the power of his grace to transform that blind, ignorant sinner named Saul. And so, of course, we know how Saul got letters from the folks from the high council. Said, I've heard there's Christians in Damascus. Give me letters. Give me some credentials so I can go to the synagogue there and say, look, I have authority from the chief priest to arrest Christians. Help me out here. And so he and his party went down the road towards Damascus, and as they got near the city, all of a sudden a bright light shone round about him. Paul was knocked off his horse, and his sight was gone, and he heard a voice. Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, who are you, Lord? And he said, I'm Jesus, whom you are persecuting. You think you've ever felt guilt? You think you have ever felt horror and shame? I tell you, I don't think there's a single person here who's ever had a shock like Saul got that day. I mean, to think that you're serving God, you're giving it all you got, and you wind up, you're actually fighting against him. And you think of the crimes you've committed. This is Jesus. He's real. He's not a false prophet like I thought. Everything I believed has been a lie. Oh my God, look at the crimes I have committed against you. Oh my. You talk about being crushed under a load of fear, of guilt, of shame. You've never known nothing like this. That's why Paul's an example for us. Thank God. God can save Paul. He can save you and me. Oh, we don't have to fear. We need to be repentant. We need to be humbled. We need to say, oh God, forgive me. God, help me. But we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to live like we're walking on eggs with God. Oh, he wants us to be able to serve him without fear. I mean, there's a reverential, respectful fear that we're supposed to have, but not like, oh my God, I don't want to make a mistake. Oh, what's the matter? You know what I mean. Like he's an intimidating sort of presence in our lives. I'm watching you, you better watch out kind of thing. Oh, God, help us to know what a loving Father he is. I know the problem is a lot of fathers aren't that way, and so we get the wrong picture of God, but he's not that way. He is a loving, merciful Heavenly Father. And I heard a song some of you have heard, I guess, about from east to west. How far is it from east to west? Lord, help me to know how far it is from east to west, because that's how far you said you removed my sins. Sometimes it doesn't feel like very far, but Lord, show me how far east is from west. Well, I'll tell you, it's far enough. It's far enough that we can be free in our spirits toward the Lord. No matter what we've done, we can come to him and find hope and forgiveness. Well, the Lord told Saul, said, all right, go into the city. I mean, you're right down the road here. Go into the city and wait, and it'll be told you what you do. Well, I'm sure Paul, you just have to imagine what he went through. 3 days. You think about how the devil beats you up sometimes, many times, too often. How he beats you up and you just let it play over in your mind. It's like a broken record. Oh my God, what did I do? Look at what I did. Look at what you did. Look at what it's on and on. And he didn't have access to the truth that we have. He didn't know the gospel at that point. All he knew was he had been out there persecuting the followers of Jesus, and now he'd gone to arrest Christians, and Jesus had arrested him. And he didn't know how it was going to turn out. And there he is sitting, and he's blind, and he's helpless, and he just has nothing to do but think. Oh, I'll tell you, I believe God used that to bring him down. But he didn't do it because he despised him. He didn't do it because he was even angry. He did it because he knew that Paul had to get to a place where he knew, I have no hope unless he shows me mercy. I mean, how many times have we used the example of the Pharisee and the publican? I started to say the Republican, but Pharisee and the publican. And they, went into the temple, and the one's talking about what he did and confident that God would recognize his righteous efforts, and the other guy, he had nothing to point to. I mean, he was a sinner. Everybody knew that the publicans the tax collectors were crooked, and there was a sense of guilt in his heart, and he wouldn't lift up his eyes. He said, oh, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Who did God listen to? See, God wanted to bring Paul down from being a Pharisee to being a tax collector in the Spirit. I tell you, God is merciful to us. As God knocked the props out from under you and you were just sailing along, you thought you had a handle on things, and all of a sudden you fell in the mud real good, got real dirty, and you were trying your best. That's the problem. It was your best. Your best ain't good enough. Neither is mine. And God didn't do that because he's mad with you. God allowed that to show you and to show me just what we are, so that we will take the proper place before him. Oh, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Oh, I'll tell you what, God does not despise that. You think of what David went through, and I don't want to go through the whole story, but David, a man after God's own heart, and yet one day he fell into the horrible sin, first of adultery, and then he used murder to cover it up. And his condition was so bad, he didn't even know what he'd done. He had no idea. You ever get like that, where you just go along and you're sleepwalking. You don't know what you've done. All of a sudden, God brings it to your attention and convicts you. And David just poured out his heart after Nathan came and said, you are the man. This is what you've done. And there's going to be consequences for what you've done. You've opened the door to the enemy, and you're going to have trouble from now on. But David found forgiveness, didn't he? He wrote some of his best Psalms. Well, that was one of his best Psalms, Psalm 51. But he wrote some of his best Psalms after that. And it was evident God continued to bless him. He continued to have a place to go. In time of need, God didn't turn his back on David. But he said one thing in there, a broken and a contrite heart you will not despise.
This has been the Midnight Cry broadcast. If you would like a DVD or a CD of today's message in its entirety, please request it by program number. DVDs are $10 and CDs are $5. And for those who request it, we will send you our quarterly publication, The Midnight Cry Messenger, free and postage paid. Send your request to Midnight Cry Ministries, Post Office Box 685, Southern Pines, North Carolina, 28388. We invite you to join us again next week at this same time, and may God richly bless you until then.